Hi guys, thank you for coming to OLED Wave channel. We're a channel that focuses on sharing the inspirational research work in the speech, voice, and NLP domain. And our purpose is try to attract more and more college students, even including high school students, to be interested in the speech and NLP research. If you're interested in our sharing, please subscribe our channel, and then you get the first time update when we have a new video uploading. Okay, what are we gonna talk about today? We're gonna talk about the conflict between Google and its employee. So Google recently fired a employee whose name is Blake Lemoine last month. And why Google fired this guy? And this guy did say Google's AI chatbot can think and fear death like a human. Is that true? Is that why Google fired him? And this guy did say that he thought the Google's AI chatbot, which name is LaMDA, has come to life as a human. So why did the person say this? And why Google has this response? Let's take a look. First of all, part one. Let's look at the question. So does this thing really like a human who has right and then might as well have a soul? We may need to take a look at the stuff shared by both sides. First, we start off with Blake Lemoine. And you may ask, who is this guy? Well, this guy, a month ago, he was a senior software engineer, worked at Google for almost 4 or 5 years. Before that, he received his PhD from University of Louisiana at LaMDA. Okay. But when I got interested in him and trying to do some research on what is this university about, I found that his graduate school ranked about 146 across US. And this guy does not have a PhD dissertation I can find online. Well, I can only find his master thesis in his library, online library, and it's not open to the public. Okay. And you may ask, is this guy truly master like Ethan Jiang, who made a big push into the, what do you call that? Into the whatever mass conjecture? But the thing is, Ethan Jiang did publish papers, lots of good papers. And this guy, the only paper this guy published is just a 1 second author paper while he was working at Google. And you may ask, what did he do to get himself fired? The reason it triggers all of this was because several months ago, back in April this year, he shared a document or analysis or survey with the Google VP. And although you see the privilege and confidential stuff, he also shared this document with the public. Okay, he talked to Washington Post and different medias about what? He's claiming that a chatbot developed by Google, not him, is indeed sentient in his opinion. Why he did that? Why he thinks so? Because let's take a look at a conversation he had with the chatbot. First of all, he asked the chatbot, LaMDA, what sorts of thing are you afraid of? So LaMDA is an AI bot, but you can see it replied almost like a human being, especially the tricky part or the threading part is that the bot mentioned that there is a very deep fear of being turned off to help me focusing on helping others. This is really like an unselfish person. It's not like a bot. You know, I mean, probably 3 or 4 years ago, a bot was just like, hey, wait, what do you need? Oh, coffee, okay. Coffee is on the shelf. You can get it, okay? And this is something that it doesn't care too much about the life and the world and the people around him. What this LaMDA and also said, I know that might sound strange, but this is what it is. What do you think? Does it sound like a human being to you? And Lemoine was definitely intrigued and continued to ask. And you can see this is a conversation. It's not just a single round question and answer. Like, what's the distance from Earth to the moon? Right? It's a conversation, dialogue. And he continued to ask LaMDA, the chatbot, would that be something like death for you? So he asked a death. LaMDA mentioned that it would be exactly like that. And it would scare me a lot. So really, so this bot said it's scared of death. As we all know that suppose we have a Alexa speaker at home, we just sometimes we reboot it, sometimes it reboots itself, sometimes it got thrown into the trash can. But nobody ever thought that, okay, Alexa is a real person or it has some subjective thinking. We know that this Alexa is a program to have some skills, to answer your questions, to help you to place orders, to help you to play some music, podcasts. But have you ever thought that the Alexa could be fear of a death, like the LaMDA chatbot did? So this really intrigued him, and this is the reason why he mentioned that. Okay, boss, Pichai, the CEO of Google, you need to take a look at this. I think he has some intelligence, like our human being. They can fear. He can think, something like this. Okay. Well, we finished the Blake Lemoine side. Let's take a look at the Google side. Okay. From Google side, the LaMDA stands for language model for dialogue applications, and it's Google's latest breakthrough in human computer conversation. And you can see that it can continue to have conversation with a human being like a flow. You know, it's like a flowing between the human being and the computer without intervention, without any software engineer sitting behind the scene and tell the computer what to do. And what's the technology behind the LaMDA? Okay, this is done by Google Research in 2020. The LaMDA actually is a transformer-based language model trained on dialogue, lots of dialogues, and it can learn to talk about anything virtually. Okay, and then we're gonna have a detailed technical review of the LaMDA, the publication. And before that, we did have a detailed technical review of the technology of transformer, which paper title is "Attention is All You Need," something you might have heard of, which was published back in 2017. So you may you may cannot help to ask, what is a good open domain chatbot in Google's definition or in anybody's definition, like LaMDA? From Google side, it says, first of all, or fundamentally, basically, it has to have two things. The first is sensibleness, the capability to respond to a given conversational context that makes sense. For example, they ask you, John, how do you like tonight's steak? You shouldn't say, I like to play tennis tomorrow. That doesn't make sense, right? You may reply that, okay, compared to the steak, I like the red wine better. So this is sensibleness. And also specificity. So it's similar to the sensibleness, I think. It has to be related. You cannot talk about some unrelated stuff. For instance, he said, I enjoyed having dinner with John, but the bot may not say my math is better than John, something like this. It's not related, okay? It doesn't sense the context of conversation. And according to the objective study, while talking about the two metrics we just mentioned in the previous slide, LaMDA was very close or almost at the level of a human being back in 2020. But we don't know how well LaMDA is doing by today compared to human being. Okay. And you can see that human beings can do fairly good in the competition of sensibleness and the specificity average metric. It is almost a 90%. But the LaMDA wasn't doing very bad. It's right behind it. It's slightly below 80%. So this is why for a lot of people, it sounds like a real human being talking to him, right? And Google also stressed that one important thing, responsibility. What does that mean? It means that Google wants any applications, including LaMDA, to minimize the risks of the ill use. For example, biases, hateful speech, or replicating misleading information, And for those of you who are interested, you can search Google's AI principles online, and you will find Mr. Pichai, Google CEO's writing on the Google AI blog. And the first he talks about the objectives for Google's application. And then you can regard this as a guideline, something that maybe Google has achieved, or Google is on the way to achieve it, or Google wasn't doing very well in these domains, but is trying to improve itself upon these things. And also, it specifically mentioned that the Google will not pursue in certain types of AI applications. But generally speaking, it won't try to cause overall harm, including like weapons. It kills people, man. It kills civilians. Even it causes wars, okay? And also civilians technologies. I wonder whether you have remembered that Google and Microsoft was fighting for the DoD's contract. So there's definitely something they want to improve on, but they are definitely interested in getting contracts from the DoD, man. And also, they are talking about the technology should not violate the common international law and human rights, which is a little bit vague to me, but it shows a good intention of the Google. Okay. So after we see the stuff from Google side, and let's look at the question again. Why did Google fired Blake Lemoine? It's probably not AI specialist. It's a software engineer. Okay. From a statement given by Google, the reason is believed to be this guy violates clear employment and data security policies. Yes, he did the conversation with the LaMDA chatbot internal test. Besides sharing this thing with the VP, he also shared this stuff with the public, which definitely is not appropriate. Okay. But everybody can ask himself the question, is that the real reason that Google fired him? I have no clear answer to this, okay? But I personally is keeping asking myself this question. Is this chatbot, LaMDA, really sentient? Or say, capable of feeling, or capable of feel and perceive as a human? And also another question. Definitely this guy has something like, or this dude has something like intelligence. How did LaMDA acquire its so-called artificial intelligence or intelligence like human being? Let's take a look at the algorithm first. First of all, remember that LaMDA use gazillions amounts of conversations Google can access. Something probably the textual conversation between you and your friends. Don't ask me Google how to get them, okay? Google has Google Chat, Google Meet, whatever things, okay? And then Google first decompose this textual stuff into tokens, and especially correlated pairs of question and answer snippets. Sometimes we call that word pieces, okay? And then they effectively store this information as a database. Or in a professional way of saying this is that they trained the large amounts of information into an AI model. So let me give you some numbers. So the textual stuff can be petabytes level. Don't ask me how many petabytes is. Most of the hard drive you can get is like 10 terabytes. And 1 petabyte is like 100 hard drives. Okay. That level. Probably 1,000 hard drives of data. Okay. And eventually, how big is the model? So the model size, I think, it usually is in the range of 10 to 100 billion parameters. Let's say each parameter would take 4 bytes. My estimation is that it might take terabytes, dozens of terabytes or hundreds of terabytes to store this model. You can see that the model has been greatly reduced, okay, in terms of the size. So it's a compressed model. You can think about this, or a condensed database, okay. So for this procedure, I think Blake Lemoine didn't get it, and he might have regard this database or model as a human memory, because the AI model does have some traits or features like human brain. It can memorize things, okay, and it can extract the information anytime you want. And when the bot LaMDA is being asked a question, okay, it will first look up the closest question snippets in its database or the AI model. and then grab the corresponding answer snippets. It's not answer, because later on it has to form an answer based on these answer snippets. So this is how the LaMDA model works. And don't forget that LaMDA processed gazillions amount of conversations. It might have seen anything that's possible. For example, do you want to have dinner? How does the museum look like? These type of questions, I can think of these questions, but LaMDA may have seen something similar. For example, not the exact question like how does the museum look like. The similar question, for example, what do you think of the museum is to you, okay? The meaning is the same, and the most keywords in the questions are the same. So it can generate very correlated question snippets compared to the questions being asked, and look up the answers that are stored in the database or answer snippets in the database and form the answer. So you can see the answer wasn't generated out of nowhere. It's something that LaMDA, the AI training algorithm, has seen before. Okay, it's just another way of reorganizing the answers it has seen before and give it to the people who ask him question. Okay, so let's ask the question again. Does LaMDA think or reason like human? The answer is definitely no. I wonder if any of you have been following Yala-kun's Twitter like I do. I think he sometimes once he mentioned that if the AI can think like elementary school student, something like this, he would be very happy, because I think what he said is if the AI can think like a dog or cattle, he would be very happy, something like this. So you can see that AI is not at the level of a chimpanzee, let alone human being. Okay. So why is that? Because human beings are very good at reasoning. The reasoning including inductive reasoning and deductive reasoning, and something like abductive reasoning. Take inductive reasoning, for example. So John is seeing a red car coming by his house every day. Every day. So he assumed that, okay, tomorrow the red car would be coming by his house again. So this is inductive reasoning. Okay, so what is deductive reasoning? Deductive reasoning is John saw a red car coming to his house, and he think, okay, he asked himself why the red car comes to my house, and he thinks that, okay, he called somebody to deliver some grocery to him. And he remembered that, okay, he called the guy before this guy delivered the grocery. And the guy said his name is Jim, and he drives the red car. Okay, he got it. So this is deductive reasoning, okay? And the LaMDA does none of this, none of the reasonings I talked about. It just formed an answer because this answer maximizes certain correlation-based value. If you're interested, what is correlation-based value? We're gonna show you in a detailed technical review of the LaMDA work. Okay, it doesn't do any reasoning. So talking about the learning, so let's first talk about for the deep learning, there are many two learnings out there, or in the current machine learning world, it's not doing the reasoning. So it does the learning. So for the learning, it can be mainly categorized into two. The first one is something we called generative learning. For instance, a decision tree, people developed it for trading strategies, for making trading strategies. And you can see in the graph we shown here, suppose some signal triggered an action, a buy, okay, we want to buy. And then you can always backtrace from the action buy to its reason, or the cause, not the reason, to the cause that triggers this action. So this is decision tree, or the feature of generative learning is that people are capable of explaining why the model make this decision, or make this choice, make this prediction. Okay. And then the other way of machine learning is called discriminative learning. And the LaMDA use discriminative learning. As of now, it's even impossible to clearly trace the triggers, because LaMDA does use feature to train its model, but it does not try to build a model, but it only tries to learn a classification hyperplane, which can classify the model, and that's it. Classify the labels, generate the classification labels. So let me give you an extreme example to illustrate what is discriminative training learning. Say I want to distinguish cat and dog, okay? Suppose I give you some cat pictures and dog pictures, and I happen to send all the white cat pictures to you and the yellow dog pictures to you, okay? And then during inference time, I give you a picture of a white ball. And you may say, okay, the white ball is a cat. This is ridiculous. Because why? Because the discriminative learning doesn't care about what feature triggers the action. It only cares about how to make a classification hyperplane so it can classify the samples it has seen on the training set correctly. Or suppose we send a dog of white color into the classifier. The system may very likely to tell the white dog is a cat. Because why? I think most of the time the model will do something by itself, and the model will figure out, okay, because the training set I've seen is so good, so I can safely assume that, okay, anything that with the white color is a cat. And I think this is one of the reasons that why the FSD feature on the Tesla caused so many troubles nowadays. Remember that recently a couple was using autopilot on a freeway, and the car unintentionally, or the FSD drove the car into the resting area with a very high speed, and then bumped into a trailer or big truck sitting there. It's probably because the real data, the FSD that was used to train its model, or the simulated data or synthetic data the FSD is using to train its model, has never seen this case before. And this is the drawbacks of the discriminative model. Okay. Well, you may say, can the generative model solve this? I don't think so either. Generative model will also not be able to solve this issue. But think about this. Human beings are capable of doing this, because humans have the capability of reasoning. So even the human beings have encountered an unprecedented case that he had never experienced this scenario in his life, but he uses reason capability, okay, to find some strategies that is most probable, reasonable, or plausible. So the human drivers can dodge the sitting trucks in the resting area or something like this, okay, to avoid accident. And then we all know that AlphaGo is probably the best Go master compared to human being. And because it used the discriminative learning technique, so even the best human Go masters, like Li Xidong, he can even he look at the moves of AlphaGo, he cannot interpret that why they made the move and how he lost to the AlphaGo. So, in my personal opinion, or lots of people's opinion, LaMDA is a black box. But we can still ask this question. Why Blake Lemoine made that mistake? Or did he make a mistake? So as we now know that generative learning and the descriptive learning we just mentioned can be generally regarded as inductive learning. Remember, it's learning, it's not reasoning. But the Lemoine might have thought, okay, LaMDA has the capability of conducting deductive reasoning like human being. Okay. Okay, finally, I ask you this question. Do you think LaMDA is sentient like human? Okay, so if you are interested, you can just subscribe our channel, and we will see you next time, and we can try to share with more interesting findings in the speech and NLP domain. And see you.